welcome to Lamakaan. It's a great pleasure to host the launch of Caste Matters by Suraj Yengde. We have a very distinguished panel here to comment on the book and reflect on it. And so the format of the event today is going to be Suraj is going to start with just a 10-minute reading from the book. He's going to read some sections of his choice from the book, after which we'll have all the three commentators comment for 10 minutes each on their reflections on the book. Dr. Kancha Ilaya is well known, needs no introduction. Dr. Ilaya Shepherd is his last position was as the director of the Center of Social Exclusion at Manu, and he's been a long-term commentator and a person in the struggle here in Hyderabad. Dr. Manisha Bangar is a medical doctor, gastroenterologist and hepatologist in the city, and a long-standing contributor to struggles of the socially marginalized. Served as the national vice president for BAMSEF, and now is currently the vice president for the People's Party of India. And Prashant Donta is a student leader who has been a household name here in Hyderabad, out of HCU, research scholar currently at the HCU, and former president of the student union at HCU, and also the former president of the Ambedkar Student Association. The three eminent panelists will comment on the book, and then we will revert back to Suraj, who will speak for 10 minutes in terms of just responding to all of the comments. And I also want to invite Mr. Madhav Rao, ex-Chief Secretary for the government here, who's also here. Please come and join the panel. And Mr. Madhav Rao will then make a few comments and then conduct a Q&A with the audience. Thank you so much, and on to Suraj.
Thank you so much, Biju. Let's give it up for Biju, Kranti, Naeem, and all the dear friends of Lamakaan who have really put up this together. Thank you. I'm very empowered with this current panel, because this is something I would cherish for a very, very long time. Having Kancha Ilaya sir, having Dr. Manisha Bangar, having dear brother Prashant Donta in the struggle, as well as sharing this dais, and our great secretary, Sir Madhav Rao. And more importantly, for you, the Hyderabad audience, coming in such colors and light, it's just a festivity for my eyes. Thank you for being here. I'm given 10 minutes, and there are some things I would like to address. Since we are living in a nationalist era, let me talk about a concept that I describe in this book called Dalit patriotism. Brahminism comes in various forms and formulas. The overarching tendency is to render the Brahmin influence invisible. Thus, everything a Brahmin does is presented as a Hindu project, including various anti-social activities executed by Brahmin-led organizations. However, Brahmin caste rituals, cultures, and worship patterns differ from that of non-Brahmin Hindus. The Ganpati Festival is a good example, initiated by Bal Gangadhar Tilak, an orthodox Chitpavan Brahmin. By the way, Chitpavans currently run RSS. This festival is widely celebrated for 10 dedicated days. Initiated as a national project, the ritual of Visarjan, which is immersion of the idol into the river or the sea, was masterminded by Tilak. However, in a Brahmin household, the Ganpati Festival is wrapped up in just 3 days. Even the extravagant public display of Visarjan, the immersion, is absent in the Brahmin Ganpati Puja. The idol is comparatively smaller in size, and the function is meant only for the family, so no one belonging to another caste is invited into the sanctum sanctorum. A glass full of water is poured on the idol of Ganpati, which suffices for the ritual, as opposed to the hefty expenditure done by non-Brahmins. Even though the non-Brahmin Ganpati festival is celebrated under the strict religious guidance of Brahmins, Brahmin visibility is minimal when it comes to contributing to the large financial expenditures. Universalism is appreciated for the commonality it commands and for the fact that it speaks to everyone. The Dalit, on the other hand, is considered a marginal, secondary category infused with narrowness. The idea of Dalit universalism has never appeared in mainstream thought or social and political action. The commonly available discourse is based on fantasized abstractions of the Dalit experience. Therefore, Dalit universalism is not even considered, while stereotypical and misplaced ideas about Dalits are circulated in the privileged caste public spheres. The theorization on Dalits correspond with the pulpit-oriented Sanskritic analysis that deliberately obfuscate the, I emphasize, material experiences of Dalits, which are rooted in the universal experiences of human oppression. The Dalit is represented as a fixed, unmoving category. He or she is the genteel server who is passive in reclaiming his or her share of justice, one who helps maintain the caste system. The theory of Dalit life is described through the lens of Brahminical actors, and therefore the ideal Dalit is shown as someone who does not threaten the established Brahminical order. The experiences of Dalits are tied to the privileges of the dominant caste, and by excluding their material deprivation from the discourse, Dalits appear to be without aspiration. The experience of Dalits is comparable to that of other oppressed groups who fight for equal access to opportunity and financial security. However, Brahminical theory represents them as ritually confined beings instead of as worldly beings. Dalit universalism locates the self beyond the outside, the peripheral universality, beyond also the peripheral identities that seek to prioritize their own identity over the hegemonic orders. The emergence of third world, global south, or other modernist-centered logos of humanity is premised on the uniqueness and exclusivity of identities. These appeal for a self-imposed isolation, whereas Dalit universalism, on the other hand, appeals for a common humanism, a collective of everyone as human beings, and access to a universal vision of humanity. A compassionate form of Maitri, the Buddha's notion of fellowship, informs the humanist tradition that underscores Dalitness. The idea of contemporary India is a Brahminical project designed by Brahmins. They dominate important positions in all sectors and are overrepresented everywhere in India. Corruptions, scandals, and a rapidly failing state, these are the inevitable effects of the Brahminical project. Dalit universalism, on the other hand, is a moment of refusal to compromise with the ever-growing disasters. It offers a nuanced view of the mayhem caused by orthodox, religious, and capitalist forces. Many progressive struggles that promised to subvert the existing unequal order reproduced another set of hierarchies. For instance, the communist revolution had promised a vertical order run by the lower classes, but the dictatorship of the proletariat merely became a new way of maintaining the unequal order. The Dalit movement, however, promises a horizontal order where no one is downgraded to subhumanity. As Dalits lead honorable lives, their quest is to give the same to everyone. We know the famous example of Kanshiram, where he didn't want to subvert the pen, but he wanted to equalize the society. I will talk about something that has been with me. Now I'll talk, that was Dalit universalism. This is Dalit patriotism. Dalits are time and again dragged into the banal penance of proving their legitimate existence in India. This is done by questioning their patriotism and ardent nationalism. A Dalit, while subscribing to the views of Ambedkar and demanding his or her legal rights, always finds a need to footnote their nationalistic sentiments. Dalits are forced by caste colonizers to be patriotic in their own homeland. The question of caste and Ambedkar's role during the independence movement is narrated from Brahmin diaries. In these accounts, Ambedkar is portrayed as the handler of the British and an absolute colonial subject swayed by the seduction of Victorianism. Instead of spreading Ambedkar's thoughts on the illegitimate exploits of caste colonizers, an educated Dalit in the office, school, college, sports stadium, cinema, and every other common space spends time singing the greatness of Ambedkar's nationalism. The idea of patriotism built around the casteist nation is a treacherous concept. It is a crooked plot of traditional oppressors to question one's patriotism and resort to punishment if one has the temerity to even declare one's Dalitness. A Dalit youth was hacked to death in broad daylight in Ahmednagar, Maharashtra in May 2015. The reason? His mobile ringtone was set to the Dalit music in praise of Ambedkar. The mere act of embracing one's culture and being proud of it sends shivers of insecurity among oppressor castes. Thus, asking the Dalit to confirm his or her patriotism is to mock the mutilated and slayed Dalits in a country that breathes on freshly burned Dalit bodies. Weekly, 13 Dalits are murdered, 5 Dalit homes are burned, 6 Dalit people are kidnapped or abducted, and 21 Dalit women are raped as we sleep tonight. In spite of this, one can easily notice the demonstrative patriotism among Dalits. Every 15th August and 26th January, Dalits can be zealously seen posting messages of their affinity to the motherland more than any other community I have come across. They reproduce the quotes by Ambedkar, who had claimed his affinity to India, the famous quote, "We are Indian firstly and lastly." Middle-class Dalits still find the need to claim the legitimacy in the country of their ancestral birth. The immense sense of insecurity is the result of Dalits' outward rejection of the oppressive forces emanating from the state. Selective quotes from Ambedkar are used to sell their authenticity among the coterie of friends. Ambedkar's criticism of the state as an embodiment of elite masters' wishes is not given a serious thought. The nation here is collaged according to the imagination of the oppressor, who is single-mindedly focused on stripping all the hard work of Dalits and the marginalized. The Dalit is asked to be disciplined if she or she pronounces his or her willingness to exercise the sacred rite of equal rights. In offices and in social spaces, a Dalit is disciplined to act and function within the codes of Chaturvarna. Dalits are not allowed to have their festivals or marriage processions travel through the areas populated by dominant caste. For Ambedkar, effective patriotism meant collectively working towards annihilating caste. A final section I will read out. In the aftermath of Rohit Vemula's institutional murder, or we say suicide in January 2016, English-educated Dalit youth started commenting on the issue furiously and without fear. This caught the attention of the English media, dominated by non-Dalits, who solicited their views and opinions to feed on the Dalit murder market that thrives on the murder of young Dalits, working people, and those who are most vulnerable in the society. Many Dalits who could amplify their tone in the language of courage got recognized primarily due to the cultural capital they had accumulated. The Dalit youth who had studied in English medium schools and brought up in the safety net of a caste Dalit household, where silence on caste reigned and were now being asked to speak for the Dalit community. Many of these Dalits had experienced caste through class and color complexes, not as it is actually lived. Caste has the unique factor of being embedded in one's birth, and not necessarily through any distinguishable outward characteristic like skin color, race, etc., which leads to a sense of non-belonging if there is any exclusion. Many of these youth in their testimonies had clearly admitted to not having had any pressure to learn anything about their Dalit identity, nor did they express any interest in knowing it now. These were the same people who had now been asked to theorize the entire Dalit experience. Thus, many went to libraries and purchased books on Dalit literature. First-timers started making sense of Dalit jargon. However, this confused state of being and non-being multiplied their complexities of, quote, being in itself, which is to perform and simultaneously be under the same experience permanently. As many individuals started finding the sense of their worth, they started coming out as Dalits. Many did so to hint at their suppressed suffering that had remained undiscussed. While the movement was hot, Rohit Vemula became a default picture, but as the heat cooled down, his image and quotations got buried under the commentaries of newly discovered Dalit experiences inscribed on Facebook posts and Twitter feeds. Soon these Dalit youth started calling out everyone who had discriminated against them so far. Their rage demanded apology and invited solidarity from other Dalits. A sudden proclamation of their Dalit being brought benefits to these people who wanted to make a career out of their newly discovered identities. On the other side, it encouraged many to break the shell and think about their humanity on equal terms and in self-defined terms, which were the result of their ancestral struggles. Without subduing to the dominant caste narrative, many owning up to their Dalit selves was a positive shift. This led to many in the dominant caste circles to acknowledge and report about the events. Many people who participated in the Rohit Vemula movement were profited from it. However, they rarely paid attention to the ongoing struggles of Rohit's comrade. One of them, Prashant Donta, continued to face 8 charges. His regular visit to court and frequent meetings with lawyers eats into his time for writing his PhD. The students who witnessed the fallout of Rohit Vemula's suicide from afar traveled to foreign countries to discuss the importance of Dalit movements, while Prashant is still struggling to get a passport owing to his pending court matters. Like him, other students affected by this incident still have to face such realities which are far removed from the glamour of media bites and Facebook likes. The Brahminical media religiously reported the updates of other non-Dalit student leaders who enjoyed caste comforts in a casteist society. And student leaders like Prashant and many others were left to suffer without any update on their struggle for justice and student activism. The ones who lost the most from the Rohit Vemula movement are the Vemulas, Radhika and Raja, who continue to live in dire poverty. The money that Rohit would send them out of his stipend has now stopped. Raja managed to buy an auto rickshaw on loan and struggled to maintain his business. His auto had Ambedkar's image, but because of casteist people have a strong dislike for Ambedkar, Raja's assertion of his Dalit identity brought huge social economic losses. When I last spoke to him in Guntur in 2017, Raja was struggling to meet his monthly EMI for the auto and was about to give up on that sole business, which threatened to push the family further into debt. A year later, later, he had given upon the auto business as well as promising career in geology. Radhika Vemula continues to be summoned by Dalit and non-Dalit progressive communities to offer guidance and light. She is a crowd puller at events, but once they end, the leader who invited her are nowhere to be seen. She is kept at the beck and call of the leader's party cadres. The Rohit Vemula movement is also a bitter reminder of how self-oriented Dalit energy has become. Many promises were made by Dalit and non-Dalit groups to support the Vemula family in order to continue Rohit's legacy. Barring a few, almost all the promises were shamelessly fake. The suicide and its aftermath also brought with it an entourage of untrained youth cadres from urban privileged backgrounds who believed in their experiences but could not articulate their sense of freedom in the language of sustainable movements. Other Dalits who had remained oblivious for a good 20 years or more had now suddenly become aware and were getting attention for their assertive views. With this sudden recognition, they did not get enough time to process the multiple meanings of Dalit, and not just the class term, but its caste, gender, and spatial location. However, the show went on and performance was rewarded. The struggle on the ground, however, was forgotten. Elite Dalits went back into their gated communities to be reassured about their future by their friends and families. 2 years on, the Dalits who wrote unending columns and gave lengthy sound bites in the media frenzy are difficult to spot. Dalit genocide continues to take place. After Rohit, it was Muthu Krishnan, but at the time, the short-term activists who had emerged during Rohit Vemula movement were nowhere to be seen. The young activists, having done their share of extracurricular activities, are now desperately seeking a career where Dalit murders are appreciated and Dalit lives don't matter. As I write this, another Dalit PhD student at IIT Kanpur, Bhim Singh, hanged himself. Such suicides are a form of social lynching that put the premium on Dalit insecurities without addressing its concerns. Dalits in India have a long history of being murdered by the social orders of dominant caste society. Relatively privileged Dalits who are armed with access to use their voices and get the attention of media because they operate in the same ecology as dominant caste media personnel. The arrogance of the media was challenged by well-versed and articulate young Dalits who narrated their experiences of their community. The strong distrust and apathy towards Dalits by Brahminical society is one of the causes of Dalits disowning themselves and producing love. They don't have a free and cosmopolitan space where they can own themselves without being judged or intimidated. Thank you.
You heard what Suraj read out from his book. When I got this book few days back from the publishers and looked at the pages quickly, I was reminded of Ambedkar's biographic images. And there is a close link between Suraj's emergence as a scholar. It is surprising, from this country, from a very backward social environment, not just caste, from a slum, how Suraj went to different places in the country to study and then get his PhD. He got his PhD by 26 or so. 27. In this country, not even 1% Brahmins can get PhD at that age. And if you read his childhood experience, now one of the great things that he has done, which I was consistently requesting young people in the universities, that you need to narrate your life from what everyday struggle you came up to this level of what you call university. It is only then whatever you write makes sense to the people. And he did that in this book. And quite interestingly, what his mother and grandmother and his father did in the slum. There's one statement that the publishers also put on the blurb, that all his members live in such a horrible slum, and nobody could go beyond 10th class in this age. In Ambedkar's times, it was totally illiterate base. And from there, the other thing that proves very firmly about my conviction is studying in English medium. This boy from a slum, because of his grandmother's servant woman's work, they put him in English medium school. And from there, he struggled to go through European universities, from there to Johannesburg. There he did his PhD. Now he went to America. He is a postdoctoral fellow in Harvard. And it is from that base he wrote this book. And therefore, if only he were to write the same book from Indian base, Penguin would not have published.
Yeah, absolutely.
If he were to be in any university, Penguin would not have published. Since he is from Harvard, and since his bio tells that he did his PhD in Johannesburg and then went to Switzerland, then went to England, then went to... And the book reflects all his rich experience across the world. There's a famous statement that he makes in this book. One of his maybe colleagues in Harvard asks him, "What are you doing here?" So Suraj tells him that I am doing research on caste. Obviously that man could be a Brahmin, right? And I thought after almost 30 years of work on Indian caste and Brahmins and Shudras and so on, the way Suraj handled Brahmins was far better than even my handling and Ambedkar's handling. He handled very well. Handling these people is very important. And he handled them not only here, he is handling them in America. He tells him, he asks him, "Are you doing research on caste?" He says, "Yes." "Are you doing research on caste in India or in America?" Then Suraj says, "I am doing research on both caste in India and America." He was shocked. Is there caste here? And that fellow is a casteist. So, this is the world in the name of NRIs exporting money from here, so-called importing knowledge, what they are doing. This book shows some amount of its structure and operation. And it is a very important thing. The other major thing that Suraj did, after Ambedkar, if you see the titles that came written by Dalits, on Dalits, would be invariably Dalit on the cover page. Title. Dalit or Ambedkar. Cover page. In fact, Ambedkar never wrote like that. He wrote on riddles of Hinduism. He wrote on Shudras. He wrote on annihilation of caste. Now, this title is Caste Matters. Caste matters to whom? Not only to Dalits. Caste matters to Brahmins. Caste matters to Shudras. Caste matters to Banyas. my friends. When I said social smugglers, he said, oh, they're all my great friends. But I think only Amit Shah and Narendra Modi understand what I say. They know where the money is coming to them. So caste matters to Banyas today. Caste matters so much Banyas today. One of the senior most Congress leaders was telling me that the Banyas have already marginalized Brahmins in Delhi. And that is what these two people are doing, very consciously. So, at an young age of this, Ambedkar wrote his first major essay on caste when he was 25. Then from there on, he built his knowledge system. I am glad this young man started doing exactly the same now. That is what one has to do. We have to kill the writing by writing. There is no other way. Caste was created by writing. First in Rigveda. Then is sustained by writing. It continues by writing. It can be destroyed by writing again. And who should write? I am an OBC. I am in the middle run. So there is very difficult space. But if from Nanded, from a slum, from living around all shit smell, as he narrates in his living room, how every raining day was totally sleepless for him in the childhood. He makes one statement, I was really crying in that. He says, whenever I go to my mother's side grandmother's house, that night I would sleep without knowing whether it rained or not. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Because that house has a pakka ceiling. And this house he lived all through had no ceiling at all. So from there, writing about highly sophisticated theoretical formulations. And see, unless one handles English as they handle Sanskrit, there is no way to defeat them. And I think Suraj has learned to handle English. The way this Om Bhurbhuvah Svatat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo, aeroplane speed. Aeroplane speed. Neither bridegroom nor bride understands anything. Whether that girl is being married to that boy or somebody else or to the priest. Speed. Speed and speed. And he can match them in the speed in English. And that is the only way to defeat them. How did Ambedkar defeat them? Gandhi is a Banya, a clever Banya according to Amit Shah, not only me. Clever Banya, he understood that Ambedkar had a better English than Nehru and himself. You read today Gandhi's writings, awful English. And Nehru's English 100 times corrected Brahmin English. It is not original writing. There were dozens of editors, correctors, writers who wrote what we don't know. So, but this man's English. So that is the way one has to handle. And I am glad, Suraj, you started with a grand narrative of pinning them down, not just focusing Dalit or just Ambedkar, but how caste matters, how caste needs to be destroyed, and how that annihilation or destruction is possible only when the larger entities are handled. And this book is definitely going to hit international market. 3 books have come from young people living in America in the recent past. This is a first major scholarly book, but there were 2 other books. One was Sujata Gidla's Ants Among Elephants. The second one was Yachika Dutt, a girl again. I mean, how much writing Rohit Vemula inspired is amazing. Though you said that he is forgotten, but read Yachika Dutt's autobiography called Coming Out as Out as Dalit. She was, incidentally she is white. She is Aryan looking. So she always told everybody she is a Brahmin. She told in her college says she is a Brahmin. Her grandfather told her they shifted to urban areas, started living middle class life. In order to have status, tell the lies. Lies consistently. No, like Gandhi, we should tell lie consistently. If you tell lie consistently, it becomes truth. I ate goat and the goat went into my stomach, started crying in the night. Tell repeatedly. And we all believe that really goat cries in the stomach every night. Even though you came eating goat meat that day, it does not cry in your stomach, but it cries in your brain because Gandhi told. Consistent lie. And she told consistent lie that she is a Brahmin, even in America, everyone believed, till she came out with that book that I am actually a Dalit. She now shocked everybody. All the media was after her when she released the book. Are you a Dalit? You were in Hindustan Times telling that you are a Brahmin. So they must have thought that if you were to tell that you were a Dalit, we would not have given you a job. We have committed a blunder. By giving you a job here, then you went to New York, became a great journalist there. Because America is also a nation of opportunities. A nation of opportunities where 4 black women made the President of America dance in the Congress. Yesterday, the whole American Congress passed a resolution, bloody you are a racist. That is the strength of democracy. So it is from that base, Suraj wrote, you live long there, keep writing about India, caste and race, and Satya Sai Baba, dead and gone, nowhere he is. But you will be there all over the world with that hair. You will be there all over the world. Because what is that Satya Sai Baba? Hopeless. There is no Satya, there is no this thing. Only some Sirdhi Sai Baba is some sense. Because he looks like a Muslim, therefore they worship and give him some this thing. See, the thing is that he is building a scholarship. A scholarship that can uproot the Brahminic roots from the ground. That's what one has to do. And he has learned because in various ways he saw white, he saw black, he saw women. He played various tennis, he played so many things. There are examples in this. And it is easy for, the same Partha Chatterjee. I don't know whether you read, he is known as the greatest living Indian political theorist, Partha Chatterjee, who gave this. Yeah, I'll stop. When I went to do my PhD on Gautam Buddha's political thought, he was director of a major research center in Kolkata. So I went to meet him with a great respect to get some guidance from him. And I was doing PhD on Gautam Buddha's political thought. Partha Chatterjee is known as a theoretician, thinker, thinker on nationalism. Then he asked me a very interesting question. Are you doing PhD on Gautam Buddha's political thought? I said, yes. You know, I'm a young student in those days. I was around 30, late PhD mind. So he said, then do you know Sanskrit? He asked me. I said, I don't know. Without knowing Sanskrit, how can you do PhD on Gautam Buddha? This is what Partha Chatterjee asked me. And imagine, Partha Chatterjee asking me means my thesis getting disqualified forever. So I thought for a minute, here is a joint nationalist thinker. I almost worship him in the scholarly world, saying that you are doing nonsense. So I said, Professor Partha Chatterjee, if you were to ask me whether I know Pali, it would have made sense. What does Sanskrit had to do with Buddha? Then I thought, this man is a Brahminic intellectual. He started destroying me. Then I asked him further question. Do you know how many people did PhD on Socrates, Plato, Aristotle without not knowing Greek at all?
Very good point. Very good point.
He said, yeah, there are, yeah. Then I said, yeah, I'll write. And he is handling him now. By taking a quotation from him, he is nothing but handling him.
Yeah.
And there is enough talk on the whole Brahminic idea, what the left in the name of left they have done. I congratulate you. This is a great job you have done. And the first launch is in Hyderabad, and this will definitely become a global attraction and a global discourse center book. Thank you very much.
Jai Bhim everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for having me over here to speak on this book. And before going into the book, I would like to share one personal narrative that I would get connected with Suraj particularly. This was in the year 2016 when 5 of us were socially boycotted from the campus spaces just because we were taking on Ambedkarite discourse in the University of Hyderabad. And on account of that and also on account of the nexus between ABVP, BJP and the administration, that these punishments were given out of the way and in an illegal manner. When we were sitting at Velivada, when we were sleeping in those chill winter nights at Velivada, we were obviously looking out for support, and we were looking out for support around Hyderabad. There were many civil society organizations that had come. Not everyone, but few could come. But there was one poster that came from abroad, and that was from Suraj and all, which gave us a sort of a sense of a solidarity, which was, which was important at that moment of time, and which, of course, had continued in the future also. Now, as far as the book is concerned, the book on several counts, when it comes to the Dalit narratives are concerned, when it comes to the internal issues of Dalit politics and Dalit organizing modes are concerned, it is definitely hard-hitting on certain levels, which is necessary because Dr. Ambedkar himself had to speak in that manner in his last speech in the month of March 1956 at Agra, when he was speaking with the community that it is the educated lot who has to go back to the villages and work. Instead, they have started looking back at them. They have started coming back to seek their own promotions, and they're entangled in this process instead of going and educating the masses. And perhaps several reflections that had come across through your book. I didn't read the entire book, but I've read that a considerable portion of your book does hint at this lacks that is there in today's context. And also on several narratives, caste as a humor, when I was reading that part, I could obviously get connected to Professor Ailea, who was in the recent controversy on Baniyas. I think there were quite many references. So these are all interconnected references, and Suraj has taken out his personalized narratives in the social narrative that exists, and perhaps any Dalit who would read would definitely connect to the narrative that he has shared at one or the other point of time, in the manner in which he lived his childhood and then he was brought up. Of course, his journey to abroad is altogether a different one, because not everyone would have that opportunity. But one thing that we could observe is that having got this opportunity, enabling these opportunities to others is something that Suraj and his comrades have been doing in the abroad by letting us know about the opportunities. And while there's one, there have been quite several references to bureaucracy, and the stand of Suraj on bureaucracy is concerned, and one can understand when one looks at the examples and narratives that he gives, particularly from Dalit bureaucrats, those gets justified in that particular context, particularly in the context of that Bangalore conversation that you have had, and another conversation with Gujarati IPS officer also. But I have another alternative narrative which I would share at the moment, because in this entire journey of struggle that we have been having in the Justice for Rohit Vemula movement, post 2016, immediately post 2016, what has happened was there was an entire media galore. Everyone came and everyone started taking up bites, and everyone was into the narratives, and all political parties, all civil society groups have also had come, progressive groups have also had come and extended their support to the Justice for Rohit Vemula movement. And also, on the other hand, there was also a propaganda that has went in, stating that the members who are actively participating in the movement would eventually are going to contest in some or the other political parties, and they have been getting lots of money from these political parties and all, just because it was obvious, having been part of the movement, it was obvious, because when we were confronting the BJP-led center, it is inevitable that we need to galvanize support from everyone else apart from BJP when the struggle is itself is against them. Now, in that course, these all narratives have had gone. Now there's no election that exists at this point of time. One was stating that Radhikamma is going to contest from one party, Prashant is going to contest from one party, another person is going to contest from one party. These all narratives have had existed. In fact, the narrative has had gone to such an extent that when we were in jail, Asad Bhai had come to pay a visit to us, and when he came to pay a visit to us, ABVP had leveled one rumor that Asaduddin Owaisi went and offered them 2 lakhs rupees in jail. And the irony of that is that any person can have 5,000 rupees max deposit in a jail when someone is being jailed. And in that course, we were 27 people. Even if you count on that level also, those rumors were absolutely... So these were built as a conscious propaganda to malign the movement. Now, despite of these rumors, despite of this propaganda that had been unleashed, media went away after a few days, because anyways, the continuous coverage of any movement might also be difficult, but also the media, as Kanshiram has rightly pointed out, it also has been of caste Hindu coteries, so it would have its own interest from having departed from. There were many organizations who had come, who had stood in support with us, had deserted after a certain point of time. But the ones who stood along with us was our faculty members and the SCST officers forum. And now this is in particular reference to the fact that even today, if we have anything to discuss about the movement. These are the only two groups with on whom we have confidence and trust. So this particular aspect has actually given us a new shade that each and everyone, engaging with each and everyone. Earlier, I also used to have the same opinion of bureaucracy, what these bureaucrats are doing, and they're just looking after for their own self and all. But then in the movement, as far as the movement is concerned, when we locate individual as a bureaucrat, as against a community of organization is concerned, this stands in contrast to those individuals. And everywhere these individuals exist, be it student organizations or political parties or any form of organization. So I think these narratives would stand a bit of in contrast to what has been offered. But the discussions that you have gone were altogether in a different context. Hence, these cannot be equated with that. And as far as I had first read your comment on that. On when it came to discussing about Rohit Vemula, I first started reading from the second paragraph. Many people who participated in the Rohit Vemula movement profited from it. However, they rarely paid attention to the ongoing struggle of Rohit's comrades. I think, when I had read this paragraph in isolation, not reading the above paragraphs, I had first initially misconceived it. But however, when I had looked at the paras that had gone before that, they also seem to be apt. But on the other hand, I also have a different take on it, in the sense that when we locate community as such, particularly those who are there in the universities, now we are in the universities, there have been, in the initial modes of time, there has been a wave of students who had come and participated in these protests seeking justice. But after a point of time, what the administration could do, and which you had actually mentioned in your later parts of the book, that how Mr. Apparao had been given Millennium Plaque of Honor by Narendra Modi himself, despite him being accused in one of the institutional murder of Rohit Vemula. That now that such giving, such an enormous power being given to people like him had actually made the campus, they had instilled a fear psychosis amongst the Dalit Bahujans of the campus. Now, how many, 75 students being filed with cases, and 2 teachers were also being pushed into that, and several student leaders were being particularly selectively targeted and then framed with cases. I think there are, amongst 5 of us, after Rohit Vemula was institutionally murdered, now 4 of us face about 4 odd cases on similar lines, while 3 other students have 3 more cases. So like that, if we compile the list, it will go more than 100 students being encountered with cases. And in addition to which, this proctorial board operationalization, and so with this sorts of atmosphere having been in existence, it also would not be possible for probably those who have come and joined in the initial phase may not be able to join, because the background from which our generations of youth comes and enters into this Indian institutions is altogether different. And particularly caste has a role in this particular manner. Wherever, as Dr. Ambedkar himself states, the power of protecting of caste lies in subverting or in attacking those who stand against caste. How you basically stand, how you attack them, how you suppress them. No, otherwise caste would have ended long time back if this rebellion was supposed to continue. And hence this had been the Brahminical plot that had been existing as far as the educational institutions are concerned. But your references to social media activism is concerned is absolutely right, because a few number of likes have never stopped the atrocities that have been going back at the village, rather than the reaching out to the villages on ground would definitely make a way out, and thus your paragraphs have been definitely hard hitting on some of the social media activists, and also there are so in that line, to whatever I had read, I described this book as offering a very new perspective and from within. I think that's more important, because a critique from inside is also important in constructing a movement which goes further towards the agenda of annihilation of caste. And also, so I mean, and also I would like to state, as Professor Aile had said, caste was created by writing and it needs to be destroyed by writing. Anyone who observes Suraj by his outward appearance does not understand the amount of struggle that he had gone through. And perhaps if Suraj would not have had written this, perhaps none would have known about the struggle that Suraj and his entire generations of family had gone through.
That he came from a royal family.
Yes, definitely. That would have been the impression, but yeah. So, I mean, so thus this book definitely offers a refreshing perspective in terms of embedding the personalized narratives, combining it with the sociological phenomena that have been operating, and adding struggles that have been going on ground into the subject. And at the end, I'd like to finish that even the neo-Dalit uprising, which you had earmarked as after post-Rohit's institutional murder, and perhaps there are several movements that had contributed for this neo-Dalit uprising. Now, particularly when we locate Hyderabad University, and also Andhra Pradesh in particular, we take inspiration from the struggles of our predecessors. For example, in '93, when Ambedkar Students Association was established, it was Karan Chedu's struggle which inspired, and it was a struggle for self-respect that inspired all of us. And in 2002, when 10 Dalit research scholars were rusticated for the first time in the history of entire country, they never went and bargained with administration, nor have they begged anyone, but they stood on their own. And after 2 years, they came back, they finished their PhDs, and now they are teaching at several reputed institutes across the country. And these were the symbols of self-respect that in fact lead the struggles, the anti-caste struggles, and perhaps this would form the strongest block in the future course of struggles. And I hope that the way in which you had narrated or described the modern trends would make them realize about the wrongdoings that they have been doing from within. Thank you, Jai Bhim.
A very good evening to all of you, and I must thank Lamakaan and Fri Jul for hosting this and starting this conversation this evening. And I was not aware that this is the first city in India where you're having a launch.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was already done.
It happened in
Delhi,
the
there is in August.
fringe.
Okay. So I just came this morning from Delhi, and Naeem had asked me to kind of speak on this book. And we were given a PDF file to go through. I was not having a hard copy, and I did manage to go through a few chapters of my interest, and I could glance through the entire text, and it was nice. I must congratulate you for writing a book like this.
Thank you.
Not only it is from within, but it also correlates your experiences from within India to those out of India, and also the similar struggles which are happening in the US, especially the African American struggles, and when you compare and juxtapose these struggles against them. This is very new information, especially for people who are of our times.
Okay.
Yeah, and the contemporariness of this particular book also is very, very important, because mostly books have been written about the scheduled caste or the previous untouchables, as we call them, or the ex-untouchables, as we call them. mostly citing the earlier movements, the earlier context. However, they lack quite a bit in the current context. So there are, I guess, quite a few things have been said. There are two things that I would like to dwell upon, and one is I also have to see this book in the light that until now, and not only in the arena of literature, of books, but also in the arena of being questioned, whether it is in media or in popular media or even in organizations. You know, all the caste groups in India are organizing at their own caste level, at all district and village and state level. And there is a distinct narrative, it's an over-encompassing narrative, an umbrella of sort, I should say, in which the entire gaze of anything which is related to the scheduled caste. You would be surprised that I am saying this word scheduled caste. Not many people would want to, especially when the book has been written as a Dalit. But then there have been movements, and then a lot has happened beyond the Dalit in the past 40 years. Whether you take it in form of the Bahujan movement or the Mool Nivasi Bahujan movement, which probably he might write in the next book, or maybe someone else writes in their books, but that has not been given or received so much of attention in this particular book. So I adhere to the constitutional identity of scheduled caste. So when we talk about the scheduled caste, and the ex-untouchables, or Dalits as they are known in the popular parlance, all the time the gaze has been on the Dalits, you know, because the media is in their hands, the narrative is in their hand. However, and we also have been, the so-called scheduled caste or the so-called scheduled, the Dalits also have been indoctrinated in a way to keep the gaze on the Dalits. That something is wrong with them, that they need to struggle, that they need to fight out, that it starts from that time in which their being born as an untouchable was something that had to do with them and their sins. And ever since then, it has still remained that the gaze remains on them. A very vibrant example, a very recent example, you must have seen the film Article 15. Okay? So there, it is the hero, and till the last moment, in this country of India, even a child who is 5 years old and is born in a Brahmin household, he knows his caste, he knows his varna, and he knows that he is superior. He's been told so. By 8th standard or by 10th standard, he is being told that you are the best, and you don't even need to question your superiority. I mean, I don't want to get into the details, but we have, if Prashant remembers, after Rohit Vemula's institutional murder, there was almost a 10 days phase in between the time that we went and did the protest at Jantar Mantar. And there was a lot of upsurge and a lot of empathy coming from all caste groups, and people really wanted to know, why is this happened? Why did it happen? And then students from the upper caste or so-called Savarna Brahmin caste, they wanted to speak, and they wanted to say, they wanted to come up and tell that yes, this is how casteism goes on in our houses. There is a reference to the thing that how racism, you're talking about one a program that you attended, and where the white are talking about the racism, that how invisibilized racism is actually practiced in their own houses among them. And these students very interestingly are coming and telling that how they are made to understand and how their superiority is ingrained upon them, and they know very clearly how scheduled caste have to be treated, how the Chamar has to be treated, how the Shudra has to be treated. So they are pretty clear. And this hero in Article 15, until he becomes an IPS officer, he is not knowing his caste. So that is the kind of privilege they have of not knowing their own caste, but actually employing the scheduled caste to clean the sewer system. So he knows the caste of the person who is there to come and clean the sewer system. And Anubhav Sinha actually employs, Kanche Iliaji, Anubhav Sinha actually employed in the movie to play the role of the sanitation worker. He got a so-called Valmiki or a Bangi, to do the cleaning. So that is the kind of privilege they have. When it comes to Super 30, I'm giving you the recent examples of how caste is invisibilized as far as the upper caste is concerned. Their caste doesn't have to be questioned, whereas the caste of the other people is known, and then they also have the advantage of asking. The hero in Article 15 asks, क्या है मेरी जात? तो आपको जात आपकी जात से कैसे आपको पता चला? You know, that kind of a narrative is being. So the entire case, even in Congress and Gandhi that Dr. Ambedkar has written, that is the first time in which, rather than being a savior of the untouchables, the entire gaze has been brought on Mr. Gandhi and the conquerors of what they have done. So this book, in a way, when it writes in the last chapter, Brahmins against Brahminism, whereas the other chapters have been about Dalits and Dalitness and creativity and movement and everything, I found this as refreshing. However, there is one adage to it which I would like to, keep up. You must have also come to, there's a very interesting example of late in which Sakshi Mishra, a girl who gets married to a scheduled caste person, we do not know his occupational subcaste or whatever. Then we also have Payal Tadvi, Dr. Payal Tadvi. There was an institutional murder in her case. There were attempts, absolute attempts in trying to show that whatever discrimination, I'm talking about how the Brahminical effect and how the Brahminism affects not only in the villages and towns, as was shown or was trying to be, they tried to show in Article 15. You know, right now also, all the people who are non-Bahujans or so-called upper caste, they are made to understand, a narrative is set in such a fashion that what, if at all there is a problem with the scheduled caste, it is something which is occurring in the remote villages. It is something which is beyond our vision. It is something which is beyond our comprehension. But then we see the same thing happening in case of Dr. Payal Tadvi, and she is a scheduled tribe. She is also a Muslim. She is in that cusp. Today also Rohit Vemula, we have owned him as a Dalit. We have owned him as a scheduled caste. But the state is still poking him, asking his mother where she belongs and what she is. So you can see how the gaze still rests upon them. And here we see that in Payal Tadvi's case also, the women, it was not only the upper caste, urban, Brahmin male who is the perpetrator of casteism, but here we see the women, the Savarna Brahmin women who have ingrained casteism in such a fashion that it doesn't seem to them that it is casteism, which actually drives students coming from all backgrounds, the Bahujan backgrounds, whether rural or urban, almost to the stage driving them to commit suicide. And still the entire, so this is the kind of a disease, it's a kind of it's a embalming, it's a kind of a anesthesia, a huge anesthetic effect that the entire country is suffering from. And therefore, the questioning and the gaze has to be brought on the upper caste persons and the Brahmins and the upper caste and the Brahminism per se, asking them, what makes you think like this? What actually happens when you come across a student who's equally educated as you? What actually happens when a scheduled caste student comes to you? What happens to you when a girl who is, you come to know is a scheduled caste but is fair, good looking? You feel more anger, isn't it? You feel that she doesn't deserve to attract attention. You feel uncomfortable, isn't it? So these are the things that we need to be unraveled. These are the things to be looked into. What is happening with their psyche? What is happening what goes in their brain? What neurons? What neurons are attacking each other? What dopamine is being released? What hormones are being released? They are the subject of inquiry. That is something which needs to be. That's a wonder. It's an enigma. Something which is so human, which humanity rules all over, and these people behave very differently. So the subject have to be the Brahminism and the Brahmins and those who are affected by this virus. So this is what I feel. And whereas, if that is the case, and also because, it's not only about this a very distinct narrative also which has been said. If you ask any person or any young person, you ask them, yes, do you know how many scheduled castes are there in your country? He said, I don't know. I only know that they receive some kind of reservations. Yeah? And they shouldn't receive reservations, and they are down rating the merit, and the merit is going to dogs these days in the country. And India is suffering. India is, all that is happening worse to India is because of reservations. So that narrative is the one which rests with the Savarna Brahmin students and youngsters. Not only, and this is totally overriding, overpowering over the narrative or over the understanding that they are overrepresented in media, that they are overrepresented in bureaucracy, that they are overrepresented in popular culture, that they are overrepresented in art, in cinema. In Super 30, when they show, they have that privilege of showing it is about OBC guy, which is Shudra caste. The hero, Anand Kumar, he's a mathematician. He turns out to be, he goes through the same trials and tribulations that a Bahujan has to suffer in this country. He's from Bihar. And this guy, he actually becomes he's a mathematician, he wins award, and he becomes a world-renowned mathematician. It's a biography, it's a biopic. And the Brahmin media is discussing, and we have people like Anubhav Sinha who are directors, that they have the liberty of not showing the caste of Anand Kumar because he is a success story. Whereas those who are not success stories, they are definitely need to be shown as vulnerable, as being targeted, as being weak. So the success stories need not be told, but all that is filth, squalor, and vulnerability. And then vulnerability is something that also excites them. It makes them act like saviors. So Article 15, you have a condensing hero, you have a savior. So this is how Brahminism has gone from stages to stages. From the time where it is actually attacking, to the other time when it acts as a patronizing element, to the time that it acts as a savior. And we see all these saviors, right? We have been saying it time and again, but there was an upsurge in these saviors at the time of Rohit Vemula, when we have seen Mr. Kanhaiya Kumar and all the liberal media being shown. It is the liberal Brahminism which is of more dangerous quality in today's India than the overt Brahminism or the oppressive Brahminism which is coming, because they are the ones who are hiding the fact. They are the ones who are making it more sugar coated. They are making it invisibilizing it. They are normalizing it. They are justifying it, as caste apologists always have justified caste. And Dr. Ambedkar spends his annihilation of caste almost like 2-3 chapters on tackling these apologists. So their creed, their tribe has increased manifold in today's India, and this is something that we have to deal with in today's India. And in this context, I just wind up, when you talk about Brahmins against Brahminism, I really don't see any Brahmins against Brahminism. You have, in this book, I feel that the agency of being against Brahminism should lie among the scheduled caste, should have been given to the OBCs and the Shudras, where there have been an upsurge of movements in the last 40 years, which have been totally relegated to the background or not dealt with at all. And the agency of being against in Brahminism is being given to the Brahmins. Whereas in the beginning only you have quoted that what Dr. Ambedkar's words were. And in fact, it starts from, you're also talking about some Ambedkarite Brahmins, Phuleite Brahmins. Mr. Phule was very categorical in telling that the Brahmin will never come down from the pedestal. And if you have schools for your children, let there be no Brahmin. And I do not understand how a Brahmin can be a Phuleite Brahmin. Because if at all he has to he has to first shed his privileges. He has to give up. What will that giving up mean? That it will mean that all those people who are occupying positions in the bureaucracy, they will step down. Do you see that scene today? Those who are occupying the media, from the right in the liberal media also, they will have to give it up and come down. Will they do it? Will they do anything that the samurais of Japan have done is the question that I ask almost 70 years later, or maybe more than that, that Dr. Ambedkar asked so many years ago. Have we come to the position in India today? Even in this era. So if they cannot, then how do we give the agency to fight out Brahminism in the hands of the Brahmins? Just because one or two of them, in the entire course of 2000 years, one or two stray instances have been there, you cannot give it to them. That is what, it is as good as saying that feudalism will be fought by feudals, or the corporates will be, corporatism will be taken care of by the corporates, or that the capitalism only can be demolished if only the capitalists become better, or there's some kind of a transformation which occurs. I really do not think so. On the contrary, if at all, Brahmins and Brahminism, it's like, I'm sure your intention must have been, and I can see through it, that it is to question them, interrogate them, and actually shake them and ask them, why can't you see through this? Why can't you go against this? It's so shitty. It's so bad. I know that's the spirit and the tenor. However, it will be taken differently, and that is how it is taken. There's a huge body of people who are actually trying to give that agency to Brahmins, and the entire thing of Bhima Koregaon and the usurpation of Rohit Vemula's movement, as well as usurpation and the criminalization of Bhima Koregaon movement, it has been solely to this understanding that the Brahmins may or may not, whether they can take the agency of destroying Brahminism or not. I feel so. This is all that I wanted to say. And then second is regarding SC. Okay, so this is also, there's one element which Prashant also alluded to, or rather he actually elucidated it. It is about the questioning of the elite Dalits or scheduled caste among the scheduled caste. So the questioning of this and SC versus Dalit, elite SCs vis-a-vis Brahmins against Brahminism. These are totally two different things. Prashant has already told that how important and how transformative or how helpful the agency of elite scheduled caste have been in their movement. What I feel is 50 years or first generation. In your book, your entire book is about the first generation scheduled caste. For a first generation scheduled caste who has received education and his 30 years have gone, in that first generation also his youth has gone, this is the first time they are ever actually going into any offices, whether as a clerk or what, or as a bureaucrat. He not only has to ward off the evil of the Brahmins in the bureaucracy or in the offices, he has to teach his children, he has to rise above that, he has to get his own narrative, he has to actually ingrain and improve the immunity of his children. When a bird throws his small birdling into the pond and tells it to fly or to swim, it empowers it. Today's bureaucracy, or I wouldn't even call bureaucracy, there are hardly any, only 5 or 3% of bureaucrats are from scheduled caste. So you wouldn't even say. So you can see the manifold and the variegated areas of war that they have to engage into day in and day out. And first generation is, and still despite that, I feel that they have really, the elite, I wouldn't really want to call them as the elite Dalit. This is, it's a mischief, I would say, by the narrative which is going on in the Brahminical world to instigate the scheduled caste with the transformating authority which lies within them, and therefore pitching them against each other. So I guess we would. This is where I feel, and then regarding solutions, I'm sure it would come again and again, and I may have missed out on other solidarities that you may have taken within India, but I'm really thankful for bringing out solidarities which are appearing in the US and other parts of the world. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for listening.
Before Madhara Garu speaks, I just wanted to make one small point. After Manisha spoke, I also knew that the last chapter, Brahmins against Brahminism, will be hugely debated. Brahmins against Brahminism, though he has given some solid examples. For example, one example which I never knew, that Tilak's son, Balagangadhara Tilak's son, was a supporter of Ambedkar against caste system, and all Brahmins harassed him and he committed suicide. He wrote a letter to Ambedkar and committed suicide. And another thing which you don't know, Balagangadhar's brother became a Christian in protest against him. A great Christian. Yeah. Is second to him. His name is Abhinay Tilak or something. So there are examples. But Manisha, I think, is it not true that because of this writing, because of the love that the Dalit family, the labor, the production, the social living, that writing has been coming about it, two heroines have come from Brahmin, one from Brahmin, one from Banyas in my life, in his life. You know, he's 80, I'm 66. We should not die with pessimism. Is not Amruta, a Banya girl, is not against Banyaism? Miryal Guda? Is not she against? Her father is the richest in that area. She just kicked his riches and went with a Dalit and saying that this is a human value in this house. I live with them. I bear my child. And here is a Brahmin girl, Sakshi Misra. She has world of wealth. She is in BJP, her father. BJP is full of wealth. The whole money is with BJP. And UP money is with her father. And he says, my father, take your gundas away. What a heroine. That is what this writing produces. I think, we should be hopeful. There are Brahmin women against Brahminism coming out within 2025. And that is because of our debates, because of our writing and asking them that this is good life here, this is human life here. And this is civilization. He tells a story of his grandmother, how love she taught. And every Brahmin girl in oppressive condition wants a loving house, not a Brahminic oppressive house. That is where Sakshi emerges into the field. So I think we should also write about them. You must write a book on Sakshi and Amruta. Two girls. Yeah. So that is what we should really. Thank you. Now,
I haven't known about the very existence of this gentleman, a young man, much less about the book, till Mr. Kancha called me around the noon time to say that there is a book launch here and I am one of the panelist speakers, you must come. And I came and picked up the book and I heard some of the aspects covered in the book. So when I was being asked to sit here, I said, I am the last man fit to be sitting there. They said, you moderate. You, after they finish their commentary about the book, you said probably he would talk again a while. No? Yeah. I speak about an author whom I don't know, about a book which I have not read. Yeah. That's very unfair. Solidarity, yeah, I think the famous unpopular thing is a glass is half empty or half full, the way you look at it. Now, each one's life experiences, what do they say? That is it the Brahmins who have been putting down the Dalits all along? All the Brahmins all along? Now, you read out about this Vinayaka immersion. Who is doing it? Is it the Brahmin? Now, if you drive from here in any direction for about half an hour, you won't miss a few temples on the way. Who is going to those temples? Is it the Brahmins or the Baniyas? And if nobody is going, there will be no temple. And if temple is there, people are going, and they are not Brahmins and Vaishyas. It is the Bahujan who are going to the temple. Who is sort of sustaining this Brahminism? This is a sad thing that I have observed in my own life. But in Hyderabad particularly, you travel in any direction. For every half a mile or a mile, the same fellow goes and sort of bows and goes away, as if he has committed in between this half an hour so many sins that the God must sort of forgive him. So this thing is, whenever I sort of address these things, which is our first enemy? Is it the belief in God, or is it just what Rigveda and Manu has said about the caste system? Manus would not have survived unless we have been maintaining, financing these temples. This is where it's the Brahmins against Brahminism. It is the Bahujans against the Bahujans, in my view. This is the way I look at it. It's the Bahujans against the Bahujans. We must get over this and ask questions. Why only Kancha Elaya should talk about it? Now, today's atrocities, how many of these people, barring probably this Amrita's case, these atrocities are committed by Bahujans and more than the Brahmins. Now, what do we do with that? A long time, about 15 years back, myself, Kancha, and a couple of professors, we said that we must have some solution for this unity between Bahujans and the Dalits. We started an organization, and when we are trying to say that who are enjoying the power in any sector, whether politics, the economic sector, education sector, media sector, we took out the data. It's all by two castes, three castes. And we said any power should be related to the numbers. We are in a democracy. The power is numbers. We are 80% plus. Then how many are Congress presidents, how many are BJP presidents, how many are chief ministers? The simple example we take is for 50 years in Andhra Pradesh, including the present this thing, there is only one Dalit chief minister for 2 years by accident.
Thank you.
Not a single Bahujan a chief minister till now. This is the position. Fortunately, there are states like UP and Bihar where the Bahujans have come to power. But what did they do to stop this Brahminism? Now you are helpless when you don't have power, and you are not interested in stopping it when you have power. The Dravidianism, what is happening? It has brought up Jayalalitha of all the people as the Amma chief minister. What does she stand for? What is her origin? Who made her the chief minister? So these are the things that agitate my mind. There are probably more than one person, one section, one group, one community which is responsible for the survival of one of the meanest religions the world ever has seen, will ever see. Wendy, that Wendy's book, that famous Doniger's book. This one metaphor she uses beautifully. When you travel in the forest, there is a footprint. If it is a tiger or a lion or a smaller animal, you can see the footprint. But when an elephant puts its foot on that, all of the prints are erased. And that elephant is the caste. In India, that elephant is the caste. That dominates everything. Caste matters in that sense. Caste matters to us. Caste matters to those who have power, being Bahujans and not realizing this, but damaging the general community interest. This is the theme of my understanding in my own career, and after even the retirement, when I am brushing shoulders with people like you in Lamakaan. That's what I would say. Now, would you like to wind up?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the comments, and I think that's why I love my people. They are unsparing in their love. They are scathing, and I just appreciate the bluntness, I will just sort of respond to some of the invocations that were raised here. When I was also talking about, for example, the Rohit Vemula movement, I was also more gesturing towards people outside campus who were in a way part of it, but not part of it entirely. So my gesture was towards those people, and it's basically, as I said, this is basically I'm trying to show mirror through every page, whichever page hits you, that's the intention, and when I talk about, for example, Dalit bureaucrats, I am actually saying out forthrightly that they operate in a very congested Brahminical space where they have very few moments of articulations, where they have very few moments of ushering their own grievance or their own ideology, so to say. And in spite of that pressure, I will narrate a story of a friend who I called him wall-changing Dalit. His wall was very neutral. He was working for a big corporate. But if he has a friend coming from non-Dalit background, he has all the gods on his walls. And once the guests are gone, that is replaced by Ambedkar if Dalit guests are coming. Or there are some insignias, there are some symbols that are gesturing. So he is living a very insecure life. That's not his mistake. I'm not at all blaming. I'm the last person to put the premium and the blame on my people, because these are the people who are fighting against the big monster. These are the people who are trying to pass in a certain way, and when they are passing, they are not selfish. They want to make sure once they are there, they will look out for each other. And the bureaucracy experience stands the same, as well as the people who are benefiting in the neoliberal era of the so-called, capitalist expansion, where it will help, and so to say, and I have an entire critique of Dalit capitalism, the way it is formed. One of the things we need to also, I think, when we think about these issues, I am in so much love with my people because they have never been loved. And my approach to look at my people is to love them more, because they love me in return. And that love is not vulgarized, corporatized form of love. It's a deep, empathetic, compassionate feeling. When you see other person, you always get goosebumps. You get the blood running through your veins, and you get your nerves getting sparkled. Because that is what this chord is about. I will just read out 2 pages of what I describe at Dalit Love. But before I go there, when I talk about Brahmins against Brahminism, actually the entire section initially is devoted to how the Brahmins are monopolies in this country. And I give the figures in politics, in media, and I talk about Brahmin inaction, like they are not acting. And then I call a section called Brahmin Escapism, when they escape their responsibilities when they have to perform. That's why I say we need cultural suicide bombers who are Brahmins, who can use their cultural privilege, to go back to you, and blow themselves up. Because you and I don't have access to the sanctum sanctoriums. We are not invited to the Brahmin spaces. So I want them to take that responsibility. We are doing our job. But they also have the responsibility. That's why I say in India, 1.35 billion people are affected by caste, I said. No, caste touches 1.35 billion people. That includes everybody. Now, the Brahmins, they have approximately 550 subcastes among them. And there is a huge fight amongst them. It's just that we end up discussing Mala, Madiga, but within the Chitpavans, especially the Konkanast Brahmins, they are very notorious. And the Saraswat, they have a bitter fight against them. So much so that they don't marry each other. There are huge atrocities. This idea also came from a friend who married another Brahmin and he ran away from house. That was a shocking incident for me. I say, you're marrying another Brahmin, why do you run away from the house? They say the family did not approve the marriage. I say, what could be the reason? That fellow eventually told that he was from a Deshast Brahmin caste and his wife was a Saraswat Brahmin. The Saraswat Brahmins looked down upon these Deshast Brahmins, and that's why he had to elope. He said, they sent police after me. We were living in small villages in different places. So I'm like, you should be the first person among the Brahmins to fight against this so-called caste killing or inter-caste love killing. But he is not willing to take that mantle because he is enjoying the comforts of being a Brahmin. At the same time, he is also being the victim of Brahminism. So there is this space that we need to account to. And they were radical Brahmins who gave up their privilege. For example, Samta was edited by Ambedkar. Its editor was Naik. Naik was a lower caste Brahmin. And Baba Sahib Ambedkar entrusted him the responsibility of editing Samta. Now, you know Sahasrabuddhe. We all know Sahasrabuddhe, who was very instrumental in the first Mahad, and also the guy who kind of teased Ambedkar to burn the Manusmriti. In fact, he was the one who was part of it. Sahasrabuddhe edited Janta, now the famous Janta, for 15 years. And he was known as Ambedkari Brahman. Baba Sahib said, the only mistake between you and us is you just born on that side. Otherwise, the rest of the things that you have is amongst our people. And Sahasrabuddhe, for example, was the guy who rallied among the Brahmins, and he bitterly critiqued the Brahmins during the Round Table Conference. So Janta produced a lot of editorials. The Janta was widely read, especially by the British administration. And it was Sahasrabuddhe who made that point that it goes across, because Brahmins knew how to communicate in the Brahmin language. And that's why when Sahasrabuddhe was advocating for something, Baba Sahib Ambedkar could not go to every place to deliver his speech, because he was one of the most, he was one of the most busiest man. Every small town, conference, village will invite him. Many a times he would deploy among other peoples Sahasrabuddhe to carry his message and deliver, because then they would go out and read in absence of Ambedkar. Baba Sahib gave responsibilities to Sahasrabuddhe and other Brahmin comrades. Of course, these are the people who are also casteist in their nature. They are not this Ubermensch, so to say, or the Superman who are void of caste. When Baba Sahib decides to go and form, first he has ILP, the Labour Party, and important positions are given to Chimanlal, Setalwad, and all the people from the dominant caste. They have the positions. But when Baba Sahib moves to All India Scheduled Caste Federation, all key positions he gives to the Dalits. And then he doesn't give any portfolio in his body to any Brahmins. That's the time when these Brahmins, some of them, start leaving Ambedkar, because they feel that's their irrelevance. So there is this insecurity among them. So that is also mentioned here. Now what we are trying to do is we are trying to show this mirror to these Brahmins who proclaim their progressiveness, to say we are also this. But I'm also saying your ancestors participated, but at the time of convenience they also escaped. So now it's upon you guys, and you have to fight Brahminism within your own Brahmin circles. You need not come and engage with us, because we are already fighting in our own way. You fight at your end and meet us at a point where we will also fight, and meet us at a common point where we can rub shoulders as common human beings. But you need not take the responsibility of leaders or be the spokesperson, which is not going to happen. But what happens in contemporary BSP context, for example, one Mishra, one Brahmin, sends fear across all the people, Dalits, who believe in Bahujan Samaj Party. Every Dalit, or every Bahujan, for matter of fact, believes that it's because of one Mishra, the Satish Mishra, entire BSP is in trembles. How much of insecurity this caste has made that one man is creating fears among you, and you still think within the slave mentality that one Brahmin can rule you. Why can't you think that he is a servant of Mayavati? Mayavati is using a Brahmin for her own purposes. Why can't we think that? And I think that is the kind of messaging we need to deploy. I will just read quickly about the Dalit love, because that's one of the things, sir. So the section is called Dalit love. Before we analyze the Dalit condition, it's on 45. We analyze the Dalit condition and the catastrophe that is the caste system. We need to understand the collective experience of Dalit survival. What has enabled the Dalit community to survive amidst the generations of inferiority imposed upon them, upon their minds? What has enabled it to reproduce the next generation and hope for a change? What are the important factors to draw such courage to face the powerful without losing the hope due to the fear of Brahminical terrorism? The reasons vary. Having the courage to agree to a dialogue with the oppressor, as well as a firm commitment to resolve conflict, is integral to Dalit humanity. The primacy of Dalitness emerges in its innate capacity to cultivate self-love in the bareness of apathy and tragedy. The audacity to hope while locked in darkness testifies to the existence of Dalit love. It is the unwritten resolution of the community to adhere to this principle of love. From here originate the feelings of compassion in the lives of Dalits. It is Dalit love that has kept the community alive and guarded it against utter destruction. This continues to be a strong moral force that needs to be carefully understood. By loving the other and embracing the ignorant for his lack of empathy, the Dalit community has shown how to deep love and efface the malice that is hidden beneath. To love in a casteist society is a violence and a violation of the judicial, moral and sexual codes underwritten in the religious dictions that are sold as idealized so-called traditions. Insubordination and defiance form the methodical process of Dalit love. Within the clutches of Brahmin ritual and social orders, Dalits have been lynched, raped, tortured and humiliated without having played any role in creating the orders. Even after chronic episodes, the community manages to get past its historical scars and nurtures younger generation to act with empathy, love and compassion towards others. It privileges reason and puts a premium on rationality. It advances the idea of love and lovability. By mustering the courage to practice love in the face of severe oppression, the Dalit community actualizes the lofty ideals of humanity. Rooted in the traditions of Dalit upbringing, these epochal values are passed on to succeeding generations to carry in their minds and on their bodies. Dalit love is what my grandmother practices in her everyday life. Her love for her grandchildren is built on her faith in the movement of love. She bequeaths all the love she has got in her preserve to younger generations. Her love is a fortification against the evils her grandson is going to face in this cruel world. Her love is also moved to find loving kindness in others and spread the value of love in the world. She understands the brutality of the system that we live in and has seen it all. Standing testament to the winds of time, my grandma, Maji Ai, an unlettered domestic servant, lives in hope, guided by her enormous audacity to love. Her outright rejection of the foul elements in society and her readiness to fight them come from the sincere love ethic that was passed on to her by her grandma. She belongs to a people who could remain alive only because they never gave up on love. Love fortified them against a system that seemed intent on breaking them. My grandma's purity of love is a continuation of thousands of years of history. Her gentle touch on my face, her palms cupping my cheeks, and her eyes illuminated with tears are a window to my ancestors, whose blood in me is a proof of Dalit love.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Saujanya. I'm a professor of gender studies from PISS Hyderabad.
Pleasure meeting you.
Yeah. So my question is, I didn't read your book also. So I just want to understand when you start, you begin to talk about Dalit love, and that's where your mother, your grandmother figures in. Okay, so my anxiety is all about whether women from this community only figure in within the Brahminical patriarchal structures of motherhood, love, as you understand. So how critical are you about introducing a Dalit woman in your book is one of my questions. And another question, I mean, also I'm anxious because the one Kanchaya sir who read the book only finds heroines from, again, within the realm of the Brahminical patriarchy, where the, questioning the Brahminical patriarchy, but at the same time also coming from the concept of love and the heterosexual patriarchal marriage. So this is my anxiety. I would like to hear from you.
A brief answer, rather my own opinion. Caste has killed everybody in this country. It is not just only Dalit. Even the Brahmin has suffered, Brahmin women suffered more than Dalit women. If you read Why I Am Not a Hindu, you will realize how Dalit OBC women. And yesterday, Faizan Mustafa wrote an article on Muslim women in Indian Express. And there he narrated a shocking thing for me. He said in Masjid, if a woman stands in between men and prays, that woman standing there would disqualify the prayer of the man standing to her to the left, standing to the right, and standing to the back. And then only man whose prayer remains qualified is to the front of the woman. I thought if this is so, no SC, ST, OBC woman should become a Muslim. Because our women have a lot of freedom to go into the temple and have even sex there. No problem. That is what temples are in this country. In this country. See, Brahmins have not written against caste at any time. And Muslims, for 1,000 years they have ruled, not written anything about caste. And the first person who wrote about caste in a negative sense was Al-Biruni in 13th century, the first Muslim historian. And I was asking all my Muslim friends, including in their conferences, why should an OBC, me, support you? Did you write a single book against caste in Arabic or Persian or Urdu? No. So the question is, today the Brahmins did not write against caste. Till Mahatma Phule came, whatever little Buddha spoke against, it was a very vague speaking. Till Mahatma Phule came, an experienced writing began and the questioning started. And Ambedkar carried the burden. And tragically what Madhavrao was saying, caste today, Brahminism or Hinduism as a religion today survives because of my community called Shudras. We carry the pallaki, palki, See, making the Brahmins sit in it, we carry it. They are away from it, they are lucky. They are not carrying the pallaki because they are untouchables, no. Luckily untouchables because they should not carry, but we carry. The day when we realize that will collapse down. And I am trying to do that after Phule. And my people don't read books. And all my leaders in the country don't know single English sentence, including Mulayam Singh, Lalu Prasad, everybody. And do whatever Brahmin mantra tells them. Om Bhur Bhusva, Tatsaviturvarenyam, Bhargo, Samarpayami, give away, swaha, they will sit and eat. We are very happy. So the problem is there. Now it starts. Yes, he is future. But I am as a Shudra is still futureless. Not in US, not in Europe. There is no single Shudra scholar in this country. There are Brahmin scholars for them. There are Dalit scholars for them and us. But we don't listen to them. We don't think that Ambedkar is ours. So, Muslim women should join Brahmin women to liberate us.
I have to say one
Thank you.
against caste and against despotism is the Prophet Muhammad himself. So there is a fundamental stereotyping or demonizing of Islam, which is in the public psychology. And Islam, on the contrary, was embraced because it is a faith of the underdog, you know. So Muslims themselves have been rejected because they actually combat the despot, the tyrant of Arabia and so on. Secondly, as far as Muslim women go, you are obviously very patriarchal because Muslim women were the first women who were liberated in Islam by not paying dowry, by having divorce, and for which reason they are Muslim women. So please, Dr. Ilaya, I think it's a generational problem. We have to realize that Muslim women have been feminists from day one. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Saujanya, and thank you everybody for this interactive conversation. I will just immediately respond to what was raised by the honorable lady here. I think when she's mentioning Islam, I think she's also undermining the cultural currents of Islam. When she mentions Prophet Muhammad, she's talking in a certain Arabic context. When the Islam comes to India, it becomes casteized Islam, and we know, especially when it comes to Christianity and Islam, the majority of converts were firstly Shudras and the untouchables. And as well as we don't have any glorious stories, so to say, from the Islamic world, from the Dalits that has come. And that's the moment we need to come and acknowledge and reckon with. We have stories of Mughal rulers and their princes and then this Rajputs who converted to Islam and their glories being represented, but I don't see myself as my ancestor who's converted to Islam being represented as some matriarch or patriarch person who Islam has really upheld. But again, you know, we might go about tyrannizing each other and we will break our heads to find rationality in this order. I think I also get your point, Saujanya, about, see, one of the things Professor Eli also mentioned, the primary nexus of caste relies, I think, on controlling the sexual desires and the sexuality of women per se. And I think from there, it kind of expands exponentially. By not exclusively focusing wholesome, although I write about Dalit women very briefly, but in the context of how the patriarchy within the certain movements exist. That's a response to Baby Kamble and others have written about it. But I don't spend much time on that because, you see, my concern is how the Dalit woman is misrepresented in its order. Now we have certain groups across the world, they talk about Dalit male patriarchy. Now I don't understand what that is. I'm still trying to understand that is. I tried to ask my mother and my grandmother, and they used to beat the men in their family. And then they asked me the question, and this funny enough, I also happened to ask to some of our friends in the film industry and from South. And they also, we were talking about it, not to just escape the patriarchy that exists. It does exist in this space. But there are this, and I think Manisha was also part of a conversation in Brandeis when some mischievous, and she had kind of countered it, took head on the question, because there is in no way, when I talk about my grandmother, I look at her as my grandmother. There is no other person that I can see the affinity that she grants me. She grants me the comfort. And that grandmotherness is not tied to necessary the stereotypical. Her love is a Dalit love. That's a beyond. It's a secular concept. It's not a concept that is confined or that is ahistorical. It is deeply historical. And what I think is, why did the Dalits still manage to survive? I think it's their capacity to love. They have not given up on that. The day Dalits will give up on loving, we will have series of civil wars.
Yeah.
India has not witnessed that bloodshed because, and I think India as a whole should be grateful for Dalits have not given up on loving others. And I think this is the one central thing that I need to tell the world. And again, in a feminist perspective, I am open to criticisms if it comes to the way you have constructed, because it will again embolden more conversations that are under this. We need to scratch more. When I also talk about my mother, their experience of patriarchy was surrounded around the economism of life. Meaning, her lack of access to certain finances or certain economic advances, she looked through patriarchy through that lens. Whereas in the Brahminical world, it's a spiritual patriarchy. It is granted in that world. And so when my mother is complaining against my father, I'm just giving a personal example, or my grandmother complaining against my grandfather, they are actually talking through this economic formula that they are not fitting into. And their criticism is coming through that lens. But if you talk about how much of a spiritual atrocity the thing, most likely my grandmother will adhere to also that there exist, they will say there have been a lot of, our husbands beat us up and also societies. But my mother would also say, and grandmother, we also beat them up. This is a true story. And I took offense when I was a kid when my mother told. But then when you look through broader spectrum, the agency granted to them, because you see they carried all they know how to use the same utensils to use as a weapon. And they've been using it. We heard once this woman beat a crocodile somewhere when she was with a frying pan or something, or utensils. You see, so these are the and our utensils and all, they come from this specific copper or whatever you call it, the ore.
Ragi.
Yeah, these are fundamentally different than the way we look through Brahminical contexts and concepts. These are very ghee kind of people who are very malnourished in their idea of revolt. Whereas in this tradition, we need to pay attention to that. If we quickly jump into the and maybe of course I'm going to give this to Manisha as well, but if we quickly jump into the identifying the patriarchal norms, which they exist, but non-Brahminical patriarchal norms, then I think we need to pay attention to how that has influenced the rethinking of this model.
I wanted to respond to her from the vantage point that her concern was, why do the scheduled caste or those who are victim of the Brahminical system, why don't they outrightly reject it, and why don't they just say that we are not your slaves and you're not our masters, and we leave that. But the only answer would be that it's through coercion and indoctrination and through a penal code system that it was bought out. This allowing or making the scheduled caste into subjugation and accepting the subjugation. As we see today, intercaste marriage is not only about a person or two persons making their choices, but it is also about accepting the entire cultural framework and system from the other side and assimilating it. Also, when it comes to the hierarchical system, it's more important. Why is caste different from the other divisions all over the world? It's always associated with a consequence which is brutal and violence-ridden. The violence can be through the state, or it could be through within your family members. Means Brahminism has been so shrewd and it's been more ingenious in that way that it's not necessary for it to have your enemies placed at the state level or at the other caste level. It has also placed the enemies within your community, within the subcaste, within the family in form of patriarchy. So the moment you transgress those lines of norms set by the Brahminical there is a violent consequence to it. So today, when we see, in today's India, it doesn't matter really if anybody eats beef or not. Or if whatever the norms, the power comes not from what anybody is eating and whether it is your choice or not. Power is that the Brahmin will decide, and it is the Brahmin's decision whether it is being affected upon or not. You may say anything, and then the Brahmin through his network, whether it is through the Kshatriyas or the economical Banyas or the Shudras through its religious terrorism, cultural terrorism. So there is a fear ingrained as well as a coercion and a consequence. So to a certain extent, there is the whole, what is after all Gita? What is after all Mahabharata? It is it's making you understand, in a way. It's like saying, समझ लो, ऐसा करना है, नहीं फिर भी नहीं समझे, you have not understood, then you will see the consequences. So there was a penal code. What was after all Manusmriti? It is a code, and it was a punishment if you transgress that particular code of caste behavior, of caste conduct. So that is the reason why I wanted to tell my friend, the lady, that with all these things today around, when Amruta, or for example, if not only Sakshi, Pranay got killed. There are many more students who want to marry the person of their choice, but given the fear of death, right from the beginning, they have been told in their family, if somebody wants to pursue, what are institutions, the academic institutions these days? There are institutions or places of terror, almost terror. You cannot speak that way, you cannot conduct that way, you cannot conduct a program, you cannot talk about your own icons, you cannot talk about your culture, you have to hide. So these are the fears and the coercions which takes place, which has sustained the caste system. I just wanted to tell her that it's not so easy. Thank you.
Yeah. So, distinguished panel and the audience, a very good evening. Mr. Suraj, congratulations on your book. And looks like I'm your namesake from the other side of the spectrum. By that I mean that I am a Brahmin and
a Suraj.
Yeah, and I've come here and this is something new. I've not much been in liberals in such artistic venues as such. So first of all, I would like to just note down a few things because I'm kind of nervous and I might forget a few things. So,
No, speak open, no problem.
Yeah, so I would like to just give my point of view, and probably if I come up with a question in the end, that would be great, I guess. So normally in my family, like you said, since I was born, since I was young, we were told that it is a privilege to be born in a Brahmin family, and it takes a lot of. You must have done a lot of good things in your past life to be born as a Brahmin in this life, so on and so forth. And at the age of around 12, in my 10th grade, I was there was a ceremony. It's called the Upanayinam, the thread ceremony, and I underwent that at the age of 12 in my 10th grade, and. It was a grand ceremony and a lot of people blessed me and blah blah blah, and I did Gayatri Mantra for a few months, and then incidentally after a few months I had this inner revelation, and I shunned, I began to believe due to the circumstances around me and all the injustices which are happening around the world, I began to slowly lose faith in God, and I ultimately shunned, I became an agnostic atheist, and Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
ma'am.
And so in my friend circle and as such, usually there are a lot of people who complain in the education sector saying that I could have gotten into this particular institute if only I was belong to a lower caste. Just because I belong to general category, I lost it, and this guy who is from lower caste got it. So the general, I would say in my circle, the general thinking is. They don't deserve it, first thing, and the intellectual capacity is degrading because of promoting people who get 75% instead of 90% and such, and which I disagree with. I clearly see, I have seen the atrocity. I follow news closely, and I see the atrocities which are committed against castes and such. So I disagree with them. But then the more rational people, there are two arguments. There's one single argument which comes to my mind right now. They say, and they may be wrong about this. They say the reservation should either be in education sector, education level, or at the job level. It should not be at both. And they say that it happens at both levels. Now, I haven't researched this on my own, but I would like to know your views. And I would like to know if this is true, and if it isn't, then.
Quick question. This is regarding the creamy layer. We often come across, a lot of Dalits who are, flourish and become prosperous. They started to follow the Brahminism as well. They are the new Brahmins of India. So is it not the systemic problem that we need to address it? Somewhere or the other, they also fall back to the same loop time and again. So what they have been, oppressed for, they again, go back to it.
So I'm in school right now, and the thing is, to add on to your question, a lot of my friends talk about reservation, and they say that reservation shouldn't be for the lower caste; it should be according to financial, the financial level. And sometimes, I get very defensive when people come and say things against reservation. And when they talk about the financial thing, I don't really know how to respond to that.
I got you.
And it's very rational when you come to think of it, because they're just you have your merits, but they should look at your financial background and not your caste background. And they give examples of their SC friends or their lower caste friends who are actually very rich, and they get reservations without even so-called earning it. What do I say to that?
This is to Suraj and to the others who've read the book. So Suraj, I know that you've been working with this concept of Dalit universalism and the corresponding concept of Dalit love. Dalit love as something that operates, that's not to be misunderstood with normal notions of love, but something that is deeply spiritual, completely empowering in that sense. Trace the relation, if you can, between Dalit universalism and Dalit love.
Oh, absolutely. Good question.
Let's start from there.
Okay, jump on in. Okay, let's take. You also want to ask?
Thank you, Suraj. JB.
JB.
Actually, I've been following you at Twitter, where you are talking a lot about Dalit pride. So I'm not worried about revealing my Dalit identity. At the same time, I'm not proud about the word Dalit, which stands for a negative synonym.
Good.
So, is it not the time to identify a new identity or create a new identity for us? An identity which can be, which identifies as a strong community. Because in Telangana, Praveen Kumar, an IPS officer, is testing with such an identity. So should not we have such an identity across India, maybe across the world? So if there is an identity, what should be our identity? Thank you.
So good. Thank you for all the excellent questions. I will just talk about this basic questions, if you will. What's your name, brother? Yeah. Suraj. Oh.
He said,
My bad. I thought you was talking about me. So Suraj, on the other side of the spectrum, on the wrong side of the spectrum, you see, what you are undergoing or what Ananya is undergoing, is sort of similar issue. You also would like to think, and Ananya is also trying to think that you have to understand, first of all, the insecurities. See, Brahmins are not meritorious. These are Buddhu people. That's why they are afraid of more competition. If you are talented, come what may be, you will stand on any ground and compete. Because our education system, sir, is Brahminical. How I will explain to you very briefly. Brahmins don't have creativity. They have never, and sir has very eloquently put across, the working class, the working castes have actually produced a lot of creations for us. Brahmins, one vocation is most predominantly is the chanting of Vedas and mantras. So when they are chanting, all they are doing is they are mugging up, right? They mug up, and then they om om raswa. We have indoctrinated that system into our education, into our pedagogy. We mug up. I became lawyer by mugging up 5 questions. I answered and I became lawyer. You understand? So the idea of mugging up is where the Brahmins excel. And in that education system, they perform well. Because from childhood, you have been taught mantras, Veda, whereas in our households, we were taught many other creative things. And sir talks about, for example, going into the fields and also working with animals and, various other vocations. So when we apply the idea of logic of merit, we are looking through the Brahminical vocation and the Brahmin per se vocation. And let's talk about figures. Not more than 3% Dalits graduate with the postgraduate university degrees. Not more than 3. So only 3% Dalits make you afraid of the competition. Rest of the 97% are not even in the vocation, 84% Dalits get into primary school. By the mid school, they are 68. By the time they are graduating, they are 24. And when the post graduation comes, the percentage goes down to below 5%. Now you see that trace how it is. So the person who is graduating with the university degree is actually a survivor of the Brahminical assault and the genocide that has been committed upon them. And so the person who is passing out is one of those few minute people who have to live under the overall living at all. Now Brahmins control 56% of India's wealth, the spiritual as well as the socio-economic wealth. We recently have top 1% according to the CSD. 58.4% India's wealth is owned by top 1%, and these are overwhelmingly Brahmin and Baniyas. And top 10% own 80% of India's wealth. That's the serious situation we are talking about. So when we talk about this competitiveness of merit, that has nothing to do with caste. If we really want to have competition, let's have competition not only through the Brahmin vocation, but also let's have competition how well you can rear an animal, how well you can milk a cow, how well you can. So if we apply all those similar forms of competitions, whatever is the outcome, we can talk about the merit. So the progressive people, for example, Ananya has the question, for example, the economic basis and all. Again, why are we equating the entire Dalit ecology or the caste ecology, first of all with Dalits, and second with the idea of merit or idea of reservation, as if this has to entirely do with Dalits? I already said this is confining the Dalits. In fact, there's only limited positions they are given, and in fact when they are promoting into various jobs, they again face atrocious kinds of humiliations. So this is the insecurity of so-called Brahmins or the progressives who don't want to tackle the issue head-on. We need to give up our positions of privileges and the powerful positions that we use to harass other people. Now coming back to the question, my man, you are misplaced on many levels. I think I don't know how that comes about, but I think when you are talking about this, the creamy layer Dalits and the Dalit Brahmins, Dalits have no agency to be a Brahmin. They cannot be Brahmins. They cannot be elites. I talk about elite Dalits. The idea of elitism existing among Dalits. That's a fundamental difference I'm talking about. And no one should disagree with that. There is elitism among Dalits and they are constricted into the class. That's why when we want to tackle caste, we need to address the issue of class too. Or else we will reproduce class hierarchies where again caste will come in various forms, and we have that in perpetuating in various levels. So we should be slightly kind of dissonant with this fact that these Dalits are now the new Brahmins who are now, they don't have agency, they can't do anything. Even if they want to go and harass fellow Dalits, the majority Dalits will fight them back. They can't go into slums and tell, hey, no, there will be a counter retort. So we need to uphold that understanding, because you can oppress a person when you have the power. Dalits are powerless people. Just by getting some bureaucratic nomenclature power, that is not a power. That is your government position, whatever you have to do and you do in a bureaucratic setup. That is a civic kind of arrangement we do in a society. Power is where even if you blink your eye, the entire system will, they will bow before you. Like your Telangana CM, kind of honor. They all beg to Brahmins. An illiterate, mendicant Brahmin. That's the power I'm talking about. A Buddha Brahmin becomes a good priest. A failed Brahmin is co-opted into becoming some temple. And this is example given by there was a Pashupatinath in Nepal. They have a very big Brahmin temple, and Indian Brahmins are gone there. His son wrote about the main priest, about how failed vocation it is, And again, in the priestly vocation, they also suffer. They don't have a break. If they sit on that puja 6 to 7 hours, they can't move. These are also their sufferings. I want Brahmins to talk how caste also harasses them, and they have to revolt the caste that harasses them and stop being, being the proponent of it. Finally, Biju, you really asked a very important question. Caste has localized people. You become a Reddy, you become a Kamma in your own small village or in all small fiefdom. Same Reddy Kamma goes to Delhi, becomes a cat or become a mouse, doesn't utter a word in confidence. At the moment the flight reaches Hyderabad or Amravati, wherever, he becomes like a strong man. Because their agency, they are very limited parochial people. They want to be kings in 10 people who are their slaves. Dalit, on the other hand, embraces the universal values. It's a universality. It dissociates the localism. It dissociates the parochial form of nationalist sentiments. It embraces the values of humanity where nobody is superior and nobody is lower. Everybody is equal. We are not trying to subvert the system in the way that we will be the new... No. We are asking for a minimum bare equality that we can stand. And how could this be possible? I want to try to inject the idea, especially among the Dalits who are undergoing some sort of inferiority complexes because the system has told them. I want them to self-love. If you are hating another Dalit, you are hating yourself first. You got to be loving yourself. And this self-love is what our ancestors have given us. It's just that we come into this Brahminical corridors and we immediately sort of become insecure, giving up our agency. That's where the insecurity of why should we call ourselves Dalits, why should we call ourselves whatever. My sense is, you call yourself whatever. You call yourself king. I don't have problem with you. Whatever I call to myself, don't have objection on that. If I am finding a value in the radicalism of Dalit, that is cutting across caste, class, and as well as regional and provincial lines, I want to embrace that universality. Of course, if you want to use whatever people call Buddhist love, use that. As long as it's going to liberate you. Is it going to liberate you or not? It has to be conditioned. And therefore, every kid and every young mind who is grown up with this immense, atrocious insecurities told to them from childhood that Prashant, you are not talented, don't do this, just go and do some clerical job or don't aspire for big. I want to tell my kids, especially across this whole spectrum, that you have immense talent and you can only achieve that how your ancestors have managed to. And how did they manage to? Is by not giving to love. Please love, and love is not a romantic, don't misconcept it with this, vulgarized form. It's a very powerful force. It can fight back. And that's what we are embracing. And that's why I call the Buddhist ethic of Maitri. Maitri is the idea of fellowship. It goes beyond idea of fraternity. Fellowship is where you own yourself. You are part of that commune. You're not an external kind of aspect. You grow together. And once we have this propagating among our youth and our people, the moment of self-love, we will stop finding faults in others. And that's also the idea of, bureaucrats are like this, elites are like this. That could be undermined is one of my aim.
No, I'll just make one point and leave it this question of reservation. Do you know what is her name? Ananya. That we don't want reservation. And BJP was supposed to be anti-reservation party. It is giving more reservation, 10% more, right? And why we don't want reservation? Dalits don't want reservation. OBCs don't want reservation. But if they remove reservation, keep the same system as it is, there will be a civil war. No car can go on to road. You are not understanding the situation. They know that. Civil war will be there. Who will lose if there is a civil war? It is the rich who will lose. Brahmins have that kind. Brahmin Banyas together constitute 92% of industrial property together. So we don't want reservation. Second, one day one RSS man phoned me after I wrote Why I'm Not a Hindu. You bloody fellow, you are a professor, you are writing all these books, you are getting good salary. What do you want now? I said, no, I want to resign this job. I want to become a priest in Tirupati temple. So I said, how can you become? What is the problem? Do you know Sanskrit? I said, does God understand only Sanskrit? Then there was this Muslim friends. I have a lot of Muslim friends. One day a big team came, high power team of Jamaat-e-Islami. Asked me, sir, you have to take Islam. Ambedkar has somehow avoided it. You have to take. I said, I'll think about it because I wrote Why I'm Not a Hindu. But in my mosque, I'll pray God only in English. Is it accepted? No, you have to pray only in Arabic. I said, look, I read your Quran. Quran said Allah created everything. If Allah created everything, Allah also created English. Having created English, how does he not understand? See, if the Dalits and Shudras become educated, all religions will change, including Islam. This woman standing here praying, this man loses prayer, all that will go. World will come to a stage, they will come begging for science into this country. So that is the situation. One condition, you Ananya ask one thing, all our villages should have English medium schools like this. Yeah. No Telugu, no Tamil, no Malayalam. Like your school, SC, ST, OBC, tribals. Then remove reservation straight away. I will tell you, not a single Brahmin, Baniya, boy, girl get job at that time. Because what do you know about production? You don't know anything about. Do you know anything about dignity, labor? In my autobiography, this is my last statement. I wrote a prayer for students in the school. What is the prayer? I am requesting all the schools to adopt this. The prayer is simple. God, you created all of us equal. God, you created men and women equal. God, you have not created caste among us. God, you have not created untouchability among us. God, you have created all Indians equal. All Indians, we Indians respect our parents. God, you created us to work and live. That is the problem. Not samarpayami, swaha. Very good. God, you created all of us to work and live. God, you created us as Indians. We Indians are proud Indians only when we work and live. Can you campaign in all schools that this should be their prayer? Is there anything wrong with this? Do you see anything wrong with this? God, you create. I'm not atheist. I was once. I'm now fully in communication with God every day. Communication with God. So therefore, let us pray that God, you created all of us equal. Brahminism will come down to the earth like a dead bird. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am well educated by these three people. I think I have been interacting with Prashant for quite some time, so there's not much I have learned from him today other than what I learned earlier. And a good debate, and I'm happy that your last statement was really the most powerful statement, the last intervention you made to that your namesake, this thing. It's a wonderful way of looking at things and appreciating things.